Good morning. So I'm going to walk you guys through how I would do this. I've got a print of my still life that I made thumbnails of yesterday. But you can convert your photo that you take of your still life to black and white and just look at your computer, and that's fine too. If you have a way to print off your image, that's fine. I invite you to do that, and you're welcome to do that. When I did my thumbnails yesterday, one of the thumbnails I did was this one here. And again, thumbnail is a quick, simple planning sketch on how I want to lay out my still life in the picture plane. These rectangles represent the picture plane. I planned out a vertical composition. I was going to have this figure along the rule of thirds. I'm going to have this figure kind of in a focal point at this intersection here. I'm going to have some diagonals. I'm going to use a good balance of positive and negative space. I'm going to have some overlap. So I'm going to go ahead and start sketching this. When I'm going to sketch and draw kind of dark so that you can see what I'm doing. But when you start sketching, you should start sketching lightly and work very light and eventually get dark as you refine things. But I'm going to draw darker because of the video so you can see what I'm doing. I'm still going to follow that sketch process, but I've got some more things to create axis lines for. I'm going to make an axis line for where I want the skeleton to be. Remember, axis lines kind of divide things through the middle. So axis line for the middle of the skeleton, maybe the legs here, an axis line for the angle of the shoe, axis line for the bottom of the shoe. And I'm looking when I do this, I'm not just guessing. You can even hold your pencil up and try to see the angles of things. And what these axis lines helps you do is it helps you position everything in your picture plane to make sure you get it where it's supposed to be and where you want it to be when it's done. If you just start drawing in some random spot, you'll probably end up just drawing in the middle of your page and things won't fit and things will end up either too big or too small. By doing this, it helps you plan how to use your space. So I've got the axis lines here. That's step one, simple little skeleton that's helped me position things. The next step is basic shapes. Just like we did with those animal sketches, we're going to do some basic shapes. I see here kind of a rectangle shape. Now, if we were in person in class, we would have spent a couple days working on something called proportions, which is the comparisons of height to width to make sure that things aren't skewed and either made too wide or too tall. I decided not to go over proportions in virtual teaching because it takes a lot of work and in-person assistance, but I'm going to touch on the idea here. Something you can do to make sure that things are correct is compare things. So you can compare the width to the height. I see that the width of this is equal to about 1 1/4 height. So that is equal to that. And that's something I can do to try to make sure I get some things proportionally correct. So I've got this here. I'm going to go ahead and loosely, actually I'm still drawing too light because I'm in the habit of doing this correctly. So I'm going to start drawing a little darker here so you can see better. So again, you should start drawing light. I'm going to draw dark just so you can see this better. Another thing I can do is draw the negative space. I see there's a negative space gap between the shape of the arms and the body here. Simple little rectangles, kind of curved on the end. This one comes down a little further. Down here, this negative space between the figure's legs. If I draw that negative space, if I sketch that in, that's going to actually help me get these legs a little bit more accurate. So I'm going to draw, again, I work from general to specific, big shapes and general shapes to more refined and more specific shapes. So I'm still on step 2, making basic shapes here. Here I break this down. What kind of shapes do I see here? I see kind of a teardrop shape underneath here. This is that. I kind of look at the angle. Where's that pointing? Now, and again, you can also employ contour line drawing when you do this to try to help yourself get things right. Especially on the refined stage, but when you're looking at things, you can slow down and really look and try to follow the contours. I've got this exiting the picture plane up here, one of our composition tactics. I'm going to have the shoe exiting the picture plane a bit too. And again, I'm sketching loosely. I'm not trying to be perfect. I can look at the negative space here to help me get this right. I can look at the angle of that. So when you have something complex, use the negative space to help you draw it as well. This little mouse thing, hamster, mouse, whatever it is, what do you guys think that is? It's got the foot broken here. I might just look at the other foot and kind of add a foot in here anyway. Maybe I'll have it hanging off. Oval shape, another oval shape, another oval shape for the leg. I'll start with a little oval for this foot over here. Circle oval for the hand. This carrot thing over here. Got these chubby cheeks. So basic shapes. Now I don't expect you to draw as quickly as I'm drawing. I've been drawing for decades at this point, so you know it's kind of second nature to me like writing is. And if you draw enough and you practice enough, drawing can become second nature like writing is to you as well. It just takes time and practice to get there. So I've got my rough sketch in here. I've started with the axis lines to position it. I've got basic shapes. I've filled most of my space here. And now I'm going to go to the refine for accuracy stage. And at this point is where I really slow down and look at things more specifically. I see that I've got this angle of the mouse thing going straight up and down, but really it's kind of leaning forward. So I might want to kind of restate and resketch. And that's okay if you ever need to do that. You can erase it if you want. But if you've drawn lightly enough, then you can just restate and draw right through it. I've been drawing kind of dark, so I am going to go ahead and erase some. But that's... So I see that needs a little bit of restating. And again, I don't expect you guys to be perfect. I just want to see you working the process and doing the best you're capable of doing at this point of your development. And it's probably better than you think or realize if you really take the time to do that. If you really take your time and look. And again, the secret to drawing is looking. That's it. That's it. That's everything. Now, the next step is, learning to coordinate your hand with what you're looking at so that you can actually draw what you see and not what you think or believe or memorize. And that's really important. A lot of students just try to memorize what they're drawing and do it from memory. And you're never really going to get good results for that. I know it's awkward to try to... So I'm refining now. I'm looking more closely. I know it's awkward to continuously look at what you're drawing, and that does take some practice. But that's really, it's all of it. That's the secret. That's all there is to it, is that if you're looking, you're going to be more accurate. Everything's got a shape. There's positive space and negative space. Now in here, even lights, highlights, and shadows have shapes. So as I refine this, I'm going to also include in my sketch some of the shapes of the highlights and the shadows. If you have something with words in your sketch, unless you really, really want them, like if you're drawing a soda bottle or something, unless you really, really want those words, just ignore them and focus on the form. I'm not words, if you're going to do those accurately, if you're a more experienced art student and you want to do those just for the challenge, then I invite you to do that. But if you're not very experienced, there's so many details in the curves and stuff of the words that I would say just don't bother. Stick with the form of the object that you're drawing and don't worry about the words. So contour line drawing is, I don't know how well you can see the shadows in the shoe, but contour line drawing is also a good way to approach those highlights and shadows so that you're just looking at what you're drawing and drawing it as you see it. A little highlight on the shoe over here. Shadows in here. There's a highlight on this arm up here. So, and that's also the next secret. One, drawing accurately is a matter of drawing what you see and not what you try to memorize. You know, really looking. The other thing is getting your values correct. Remember, value is one of our elements of design, and value refers to how light or how dark something is. And I haven't started shading yet, but when I do, that's going to be all about also looking and putting the right value in the right spot. Because it's just a matching game at that point. If you put the right value in the right shape, in the right spot, then that's how it comes together. It's really quite simple. Now, it's not easy to do if you're not experienced, but the concept, once you wrap your head around that, is not impossible. It's like anything, takes time, takes practice. I like to use the analogy, tell the story of, and ask students, you know how long the average football game is? And most people will say, oh, you know, a couple hours. You watch it on TV, football game takes a couple hours. You know, maybe a little longer if there's a lot of timeouts or, you know, play is delayed for some reason. But that's not the actual time the game takes. The game is played from the time the ball is hiked until the time the ball is down. And all of that time adds up to an average of something like 6 minutes. So 6 minutes of game time, 6 minutes of high intensity, high consequence performance. But nobody ever stops to question whether all of that time they spent in practice, on the training field, in the gym, running drills, hours and hours and hours and hours of practice for 6 minutes of performance. So, you know, when you look at it that way, practicing to get better at art, and even if it's not art, anything you're interested in personally, anything that you want to do that matters to you, if you want to get good at it, whether it's a hobby or something you want to do professionally, something you want to do for a career down the road, takes practice. Practice, practice, practice. It's everything. So again, I'm sketching loosely. Well, I'm in stage 3 now. I'm refining for more accuracy. And I'm drawing darker so you can see it than I would be if I were sketching this for myself, because I want you guys to be able to better see what I'm doing here as I sketch. And I'm working a section at a time, a piece at a time. I'm not just kind of glancing at it, trying to remember what it looks like. Everything that I'm drawing as I'm looking at the picture. And some other things I'm doing that you can't see is I'm paying attention to, okay, if I drew a horizontal line there, I see that this is actually slightly above that. It's not just a mirror image, it's actually a touch higher than this one is. You know, so I'm paying attention to things like that. That also goes to proportion. The width of this area here, have I got that right? This foot thing here, and I see that that actually goes more out here. And if you got to restate, it's okay. If you notice that you did something off at any point, it's okay to restate and redraw. It's fine. It's pencil. It's made to be erased if you need to erase it. But again, if you're drawing lightly like you should be at this point, then you shouldn't need to really erase. You can just restate. You can just draw right through it and keep going. I'm needing to erase some earlier because I'm sketching much darker than I would be. So I look up here, I look at the shape. What is the shape here? There's a shape here specific under that chin. Now, sometimes with faces and stuff, students get freaked out. That's a face. I can't draw faces. I can't do people. Don't try to do people. Don't try to do things. Don't even worry about what the object is. You can draw that shape. That's a little rectangle shape. That's a little rectangle shape. That's a little funky, almost rectangle shape. You can draw any one of those shapes. It's not beyond your ability. And if it's kind of like putting a puzzle together. You know, you look at the 1,000 pieces laying on the counter or the table, and it's like, wow, I don't know if I can put all that together. That's so much. But if you connect one little puzzle piece next to another little puzzle piece, next to another little puzzle piece, next to another little puzzle piece, as you refine, it's actually perfectly doable. Does it take a little time? Sure. You know, but, you know, most things that are worthwhile take a little bit of time. You know, you want a good relationship with somebody, you have to invest some time in it. You want to get good at a sport, you got to put some time in it. You want to get an A on your math test, you're going to have to put some time in it. Now, some people have more of an aptitude for things than others and pick up on things more easily and quickly. That is true. But I'm here to tell you that when I was a kid, in elementary school and middle school, I did not draw better than other kids. I wasn't some kind of prodigy that always was good at this stuff. I just enjoyed doing it. So because I enjoyed doing it, I kept doing it and eventually got better at it. And I studied and I learned and I took classes and I practiced and practiced and practiced, and eventually I started getting kind of good at this stuff. And it really does help if you enjoy doing it. See, that's the thing. When I look back at some of my old drawings when I was a kid, and it's like, gosh, where did I even find the motivation to keep going? Because it really wasn't particularly good. But I liked it. It was kind of relaxing. It was chill. I got grounded a lot as a kid. So, you know, it was something I could do in my room when I was grounded, you know, to pass the time. That and reading was a lot of what I did as a kid when I was grounded. You guys got COVID. You're not grounded, but COVID is just about the same as being grounded because it's making you have to stay home most of the time instead of getting out, playing and riding your bike and hanging out with friends. And I'm sorry you're not able to do that. So I've got this pretty roughly sketched in at this point. And again, if I were doing this, if I were you, I would be sketching this much more lightly, and I would not be so dark, because at this stage, so we've done step 1, we did axis lines, step 2, basic shapes, step 3, refine for accuracy. Step 4 is add shading and texture. So we're doing blended shading for this assignment, and I'm not going to record me shading this whole thing, but I'm going to remind you, blended shading, a couple things. One, at this point it's a matching game. If you wanted, you could maybe, make a little value scale that goes from as dark as your pencil can get to a little less dark to a little less dark. And I'm controlling this with my pressure on my pencil. So the more pressure, the darker, the less pressure, the lighter. And when we shade, we want a gradual change in value. Now this pencil is a 4B. This is one of my darker pencils. I could also get, I've got a 2H here. You might not have a 2H, but a 2H is a pretty light lead, so I can get lighter values also if you have drawing pencils with different leads. I don't know how well you can see this, but this is getting lighter and lighter. So you can kind of make a value scale for yourself, and you can kind of maybe hold it up, and you can use this, fold the edge, and you can kind of use this to go, how dark is this shoe? How dark is this, and you can hold it up to your computer screen. How dark is this area? There's very little on here that's pure white except for the very brightest highlights. And like we did with the balloon, for white areas, we want to shade around that and just let the white of the paper show. But you could make a value scale like this for yourself and kind of estimate what the values are of things while you're shading. So a couple different approaches. Again, for this assignment, we're doing the blended shading technique. And that technique means that your shading tones are going to be smooth, and you're not going to see like hatchy, scribbly lines, or, it's going to be a smooth, gradual change in value. It takes some practice. Different ways you can do it. One, circular motion. If you're using the tip, you can use a tight circular motion, and that takes a little bit more time. For my more experienced art students, you may want to do this. You can get a really nice texture, really nice tones out of using these tight circular motions, where in the end you don't see the individual pencil marks, you just see the tone or the value itself. So I'm doing this area in here. That's pretty dark and gets a little bit lighter. I can also use the side of my pencil. That will allow you to cover kind of more area as well. I see it's lighter, kind of mid-tone in here, almost white in this area. It's kind of darker up here. And highlights and shadows also have shapes. Just like we looked at the specific shapes when we were sketching our objects, the shapes of the shadows and the highlights themselves also have shapes. So pay attention to that as well. So shading that, it's a little bit lighter in here, a little bit darker here. And it's creating, and a lot of times when students shade, they don't get dark enough in their shadows. Again, take your photo, convert it to black and white. You might even want to increase the contrast in the photo editing software that you have on your computer or on your phone, and email it to yourself if you've got filters and stuff. You might want to increase the contrast so that your darks are a little darker in your reference photos so that you can aim to match those. So those are my darkest darks. Now in here, in these legs, there is some texture, and the texture almost does look like lines. Let's see if I can find a pencil that's not quite so sharp. A lot of times a really sharp pencil, don't shade with those mechanical pencils that you click. The points are too sharp, they break too easily, they're not as good to control for changing your value. Use regular number 2 yellow pencil, or if you're lucky enough to have some, drawing pencils of different values. What I'm doing right now is just kind of dulling this tip a little bit so that I don't have a real sharp tip. But this does have some texture that does have a sense of line. So for this part, if you've got something that overtly looks like it has lines in your reference, then that's fine. At that point, you can go ahead and do something that looks like lines. It's a little darker down here. This part, here's a good example here. These are both dark, but clearly one's darker than the other. In this one here, I'm going to get that just as black as I can get it with my pencil. And that one there, I can use the same pencil. I can come in and just not use as much pressure and still get it dark. So that's still pretty dark, but it's not as dark as that. So I've got that change in value. And value changes are what make things look 3D. That's what makes things look real, is really having that wide range from dark to light. If everything's just middle gray, it looks kind of flat. But when you have true darks, true lights, and a range of tonal value in between, then that's what starts to make things look 3D. Here's that really dark area again, coming around here. So a lot of pressure. So it's a matching game. Now this is a summative, so do your best. I'll post this, I'll finish this at some point and I'll post it so you can see what it looks like. But at this point it's a matching game. Like I said, you can make a value scale and kind of figure out just how light and dark things are relative to each other. And do that, match that in there. If you got any questions, need any help, this is the process to get your still life started. Again, minimum requirements: must fill your space, 75, 80% of your space. I probably could have zoomed in even more on this. You must have at least 2 objects overlap. I've got everything overlapping here. You can have everything overlap too, but don't just set things next to each other with a gap in between them. Part of this is also learning how to draw things that are overlapping. That can be a challenge. Also, a wide range of value from light to dark, and using blended shading. I have some other examples of still life posted in a presentation that show you some good shading examples. Hit me up if you have any questions. Have a good day.